Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In episode 580, we had talked about the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan. That conflict has ended. That war has ended. And unlike most wars in recent decades, this war has ended decisively in the sense that there is a victor, that is Azerbaijan, and there is a defeated side, that is Armenia. In fact, Armenia is so comprehensively defeated that reading up on this, in generally the strategic circuit, I found tweets that said, and I'll share one of those with you, that this is only the second time since Second World War that a nation has surrendered to the other in a war. The first time being Pakistan in 1971 war in Bangladesh. Now, this is not exactly a surrender in that sense of large bodies of troops surrendering to the other side, but in terms of the other side getting the territory it wanted and getting its political objectives achieved. This is as good or bad, as good for Azerbaijan, as bad for Armenia as it was good for India and bad for Pakistan in 1971. Now, before we go into how this happened, today's Cut the Clutter is not about, I might mention a little bit, it's not so much about the politics of this or the diplomacy of this or the geostrategic implications of this, but it is about warfare, about the nature, changing nature of warfare. And today's Cut the Clutter is about what gave Azerbaijan such a dramatic victory. But before I go into that, I think you should watch this video of a few seconds. It's a publicity video released by the Azerbaijani Ministry of Defense. So please watch this video, and when we watch this video, just a few seconds, we will then be able to understand better what exactly happened and why do we find this to be such a revolutionary change in warfare. Now, this is a war that has been won by Azerbaijan. These are small countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan is bigger than Armenia, but small countries. We also know, and you might remember from 580 episode, that in the previous war that the two countries had in the 90s, Armenia had given Azerbaijan a hiding. They had defeated Azerbaijan then. Much larger army, much larger country, much larger economy. Why? Because Armenian army then had professionalism, better training, better technology, better electronics, and better weaponry. What has happened now is that those tables have turned. Now Azerbaijan had better electronics, better weapons, better technology, and they achieved a resolution much faster. The difference is that the weapons have changed now and technology has changed now. So this war that began in September 27 and ended last week is actually the first war in the history of modern warfare that has been won almost entirely on the strength of drone warfare. Now, in our popular imagination, when we say drone warfare, we think of these big American Predator drones going over Waziristan or generally the AfPak region, dropping stuff and killing terrorists and terrorist leaders. The drones that are used in this war are different. One, because it's very difficult to afford Predators, and second, these are drones for a specific purpose. So Azerbaijan it is that used the drones. Armenia might have had a few, but they did not have the ability to use them for drone warfare or to even counter the drones coming in from the Azerbaijani side. So Azerbaijan used two kinds of drones. One, the Turkish-made Bayraktar 2 drones, and you will see pictures as I speak. These carry a warload or a bomb load of about 55 kg right now. These drop the bomb load and come back. Turkey has done a very good job of producing these, and these are expensive, and Azerbaijan has bought quite a few of these. The number is still unspecified, but I will tell you, Azerbaijan only bought these in June this year. They bought these in May and June this year. Then they held a series of exercises with Turkish armed forces between June and September, learned to use this, learned to use the electronics, and that became not just a force multiplier, but that became an enforcer in this war. The second set of drones the Azerbaijanis used are drones which are called kamikaze drones. These are Israeli made kamikaze drones. Why kamikaze? You remember kamikaze means a suicide attack. So these drones are called kamikaze. They are made in Israel. They are Harpo 2, also called Harpy 2. These are drones that carry a bunch of explosives inside them. Not very heavy, maybe some 10 or 15 kilos, but very specialized explosives. And when they find a target, and they have the ability to seek a target, because they are radar seeking, they also can pick up electronic signals. So these are drones which are expensive but very useful when it comes to targeting your adversaries' missile batteries, surface to air missiles, in particular your adversaries' air defenses, radars, because all of those emit radiation. And these drones can work in dual mode, which means they can work by themselves. That is, if a radar is active, it can pick up the signals, or if people have switched off the radar because there are electronic countermeasures and electronic countermeasures, then the man on the ground or a woman on the ground, whoever, can also control these. The other thing about these radar, these drones is that if they find a target, they go and crash into the target and destroy the target. But if they do not find a target, they can come back and land back at their base. In fact, just an incidental point to note that Indian Air Force has ordered a bunch of these. They had bought a bunch of these last year, and now they are increasing their arsenal of these Israeli Harpy 2 drones, kamikaze drones. Now, what is the outcome of this war? That is the dramatic thing. And it caught my attention because I found a story in Washington Post, which you should read, and I'm sharing it with you. A story by their Moscow-based correspondent called Robin Dixon. And that story tells you, in fact, the headline of the story is that how this dirty little war changes the future of warfare, future of modern warfare. Then I got to a military affairs blog called Oryx, and I'm sharing a link with you of that blog, very detailed. What they have done is, this Oryx blog, that looking at all the pictures and videos coming from both sides, and obviously Azerbaijan has produced a lot more videos because they have swarms of drones over that little battlefield. So they've got a lot more pictures and videos. So just by tallying those pictures and videos, they have established how much equipment has been lost by either side. They've only listed what they can substantiate. So in fact, when you go to the link of their article and you go to the inventory of equipment destroyed, you will find first Armenian and Artsakh. Artsakh is the name that Nagorno-Karabakh gave itself, and they called themselves a republic that nobody recognized. It was recognized by 3 other republics, so-called republics, who have not been recognized by anybody in the world. If you see the losses there, with each loss, you can put your finger on it or you can put your cursor on it, and it takes you back to the picture of the video of that particular equipment. So if they show you 185 Armenian tanks destroyed, damaged or captured, there is photographic or video evidence of each one of them. Now, I will not give you all the details, but will give you broad numbers. So Armenians and Nagorno-Karabakh, they are together. Their forces lost 185 tanks. These are small countries and small armies. 185 tanks, of which 115 were destroyed, 4 were damaged and 66 were captured. All this is documented with pictures and videos, mind you. Then armored fighting vehicles, 45 destroyed or captured. Infantry fighting vehicles, 44 destroyed and captured. It's as if armored vehicles now or tanks now are there for target practice if you lack the ability to handle these drone attacks. Because tanks, if you have a drone superiority, You don't get tanks to fight tanks anyway. So armored corps cavalry people are trained to fight fellow cavalry people. You will never see the fellow cavalry people if the other side can resolve this conflict with just drones. Even if you shoot down the odd drone, what is the satisfaction? You haven't, no enemy soldier, pilot has been hurt, captured, nothing. So this is a very uneven warfare now, and it shows you the importance of this new dimension to warfare. If you look at the other losses, anti-tank guided missiles, 3 batteries destroyed. Towed artillery, 147 towed artillery guns destroyed, damaged or captured. Self-propelled artillery, 19 destroyed, captured or damaged. Multi-barrel rocket launchers, the kind you see, it used to be called Stalin's organ in the past, where rockets go like this in an array. 72 destroyed, damaged or captured. And radars, just think about it. Radars, 12 radars covering the battlefield to provide air defense to Armenian forces, all of them destroyed. Now the Azerbaijanis used very clever tactics as well. In fact, viciously clever. It's possible it was done on either Israeli or Turkish advice. So what they did was, they took this aircraft, the picture of which you see, and as you can see, it's a biplane with a single propeller engine. So very ancient, designed in 1947 by the Antonov Design Bureau in the Soviet Union, the famous Antonov Design Bureau. So this is called AN-2. These are not good for anything right now, but they converted these into single-use drones, unmanned single-use drones. And these slow aircraft, which have quite a large radar signature, they were sent towards the Armenian defenses, which thought that this was a big threat coming in, and so they activated their radars and missile batteries. As they did that, as they took the bait, and the armed drones or loitering ammunition that were in that area came in and destroyed those. That's how almost the entire Armenian air defense and missile defense, surface-to-air missile defense, was taken out. All of them destroyed without an Azerbaijani soldier or pilot needing to get anywhere near them. All of this has been destroyed either by these Bayraktar drones or by this loitering ammunition. So think over a battlefield. If you're a soldier, and there is a video that the Washington Post used, it's a Ministry of Defense Azerbaijan videos available to us. And if you see this video, you find these Armenian soldiers sitting in their trench. It's a long trench, sitting there, and you can see a drone targets it and a bomb and hits it, and you can imagine that nobody can survive. So the effect on the morale of the soldiers on the ground is devastating, because they don't know what will come and hit them. And even if they can hear a drone, they hear it late because the drone is not that noisy, and by the time it gets close to them, it's very difficult to bring down a drone because these are small, and this completely shattered the Armenian forces' morale, and that's when they began to run. And when they began to run, I will give you 2 quotations, one from the Armenian Prime Minister, who's Nikol Pashinyan. So Nikol Pashinyan, the Prime Minister of Armenia, who's now in trouble because there are big demands for his resignation and there are riots in the streets, so much so that there were riotous scenes in Armenian National Parliament, and they even lynched to death the Speaker of their Parliament, Ararat Mirzoyan. So this is a very angry country, and Nikol Pashinyan made a statement which I can only describe as a statement of exasperation, frustration, but also resignation. He says, "This is unbelievably painful for my people, for me and my people, but what can I do?" He said it was unavoidable due to the, and I quote him, "due to the deep analysis of the military situation." An army sitting on the ground, an air force with very expensive jets, having pilots, cannot fight a rival that is very good with the use of drones, which you have no way of countering, and where you cannot use your own drones in counter. So in this case, you can see, in fact, if you go to that Oryx list, you will find that Azerbaijan's losses are about 1/6 or 1/7 of Armenia's losses. That's nothing. But that is understandable because the two armies rarely came in contact with each other. So Azerbaijanis were able to do it from a distance and without using any manpower, without risking their key personnel. So these two weapon systems that the Azerbaijanis use, we told you about the loitering munitions. Now it's very scary because you don't know, you are sitting on the ground, you are in a tank and you don't know which fellow is loitering over you someplace and will pick up your electronic signatures or your heat signatures and come and boom, go into you. And what do? You have no place to hide. At the same time, you have nothing to fight. Who do you fight? You cannot fight just a piece of steel or aluminum. So that is how it works. The drone that the Turks have given Azerbaijanis, those are very expensive, but Azerbaijan also, you remember, in good times when oil prices went up and Azerbaijan discovered Caspian oil gas reserves, they made a lot of money and used that money to buy up new technologies, essentially these drones, because they had memories of having lost the earlier war because they were technologically on the inferior side. So this time they had the money, they decided to turn the tables. Now these Bayraktar drones are very controversial because the Turks designed these and built these after the Americans and NATO put sanctions on them or put a ban on them buying drones from them, because their objection was that Turkey was using these drones to further its own interests in Syria and Libya, which were running counter to NATO's and America's interests. So Turkey responded to it by making its own drones and the softer stuff for the drones. For example, the targeting system, the fire control system, the laser guidance systems, these were all bought from Canada. So as the news came out of the carnage these drones were causing, stories also came out that this stuff, electronics or the soft stuff for the drone, had been imported from Canada. So Canada has now banned the export of this sensitive stuff to Turkey. But it looks like now that Turkey has its own ability, so they'll be able to do some kind of electronics of their own. And remember, Turkey and Pakistan are now very close allies. So Turkey will not give anything to Pakistan for free because Turkey's own economy is a mess. Erdogan's favorite son-in-law, who was the captain of the Turkish economy and the finance minister, he has now resigned because Turkish economy has really collapsed. So Turkey will not give it to Pakistan for free. But you know, if you get really desperate, you can find the money and the Pakistanis can find the money. So India has to work on the presumption that Pakistan has access to these. And if you want to understand more about military drones and the various types, I would also suggest you read this story by my colleague Amrita Nayak Datta, who covers defense for us besides other things. And this is based on an interview that she did with Air Chief Marshal R.K.S. Bhadauria, our current Air Force Chief, where he talks about Indian Air Force's drone plans as well. You know that Indian Air Force has surveillance drones, Heron and Searcher, both bought from Israel. It also has a bunch of very few Israeli kamikaze drones, Harpy 2 drones, but it's now ordered a larger bunch of those. So it's a work in progress on the Indian side. Essentially, if you want to know about battlefield drones, there are two kinds. They are, militaries love abbreviations or acronyms. So there are MALE, M-A-L-E, and HALE, H-A-L-E. MALE is medium altitude, long endurance. So if you look at Bayraktar, for example, it goes up to 7,300 meters and you can convert that into feet. I think should be around 24,000 feet. Not that high, but not that low, but has the endurance to hang around for 24 hours. The distance it can cover from the place it's launched is about 150 kilometers. The Israeli kamikaze drones can go up to 1,000 kilometers up and down included. And they can also come back and have about 6-7 hours endurance. The other category is HALE. HALE, as you can guess, is high altitude long duration. So as you can guess, those are drones like American Predator drones. Now I will read you a line from Washington Post, from the Washington Post story on this war. And that is the story that tells you that the nature of warfare has changed, and this little war in Nagorno-Karabakh teaches you that. They say Azerbaijan used its drone fleet purchased from Israel and Turkey to stalk and destroy Armenia's weapon systems in Nagorno-Karabakh, shattering its defenses and enabling a swift advance. Armenia found that its defense systems in Nagorno-Karabakh, many of them older Soviet systems, found it impossible to defend against drone attacks as losses quickly piled up. Because drones are very small. If you look at the picture of this Israeli drone, it's not only very small, look at the way it's designed. It's designed in such a way that it has many stealth features. It has very little span for a radar to catch. And in any case, those missiles, those radars are designed for much bigger aircraft. These are very agile, tiny things. We also know that in our neighborhood, the Chinese have gone very far in developing their drones. In fact, their drones are being used in many of the Middle Eastern theaters as well, because Chinese sell for money. And Turkey has used that to great effect in the Middle East to get its own resolution, because Turkey is now fighting its own wars away from its borders in Syria, in Libya, now in Nagorno-Karabakh. In fact, the Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev even said that the Turks will also have a peacekeeping mission, or a mission watching that this accord now between the two countries is pursued. But the Russians said very quickly that that mission will be on the Azerbaijani side, not in Nagorno-Karabakh. The only outsiders who will be there in Nagorno-Karabakh will be about 2,000 Russian soldiers from a motorized regiment, so they will have tanks, etc. And you can see some pictures of those as well. So in a way, Russia has also found itself a foothold in this region, which it values greatly. Now the same Washington Post story also quotes Franz Steven Grady, who is a scholar of future of warfare, who I read often, and he's at International Institute for Strategic Studies. It's a fine institution where I was actually research associate in 1993-94, and I served on its council for 9 years after that. Now he says that it's not as if that tanks and armored vehicles will become obsolete. They will be useful, they will have their uses, but, and I'm quoting him, but Nagorno-Karabakh has shown the ever increasing importance of using armed drones along with other weapons and highly trained ground forces, and the exponentially more devastating consequences of failing to do so in future wars. Can you imagine the indignity of soldiers being shot up, being killed by non-soldiers, by just machines, pieces of steel and aluminium flying at you and doing this to you? So that is what he means, that this has shown increasing importance of using armed drones along with other weapons and highly trained ground forces, and the exponentially more devastating consequences of failing to do so in future wars. So when we read the history of medieval centuries, we say, oh, then we saw the rise of gunpowder dynasties. So these were cultures or dynasties or countries that developed gunpowder, and because they came with cannons that fired explosives, that completely tilted the balance in the battlefield in their favor. So armed drones now are the new gunpowder. Armed drones are to today's warfare what gunpowder was in the early second millennium. Don't forget that. And if you still want to know more about what happens in the accord and its imperfections, I'm not going into that now. So I'm sharing two readings with you. One is Paul Stronsky from Carnegie Endowment's website, very nice piece on uneasy peace, stunted peace in Nagorno-Karabakh, as he calls it. And second is from EurasiaNet.org, which talks about the deal which leaves as many questions as it answers.